Hey guys, welcome back. During Halo Reach, we watched Noble Team fall one by one to the Covenant, each death outweighing the last. It was the perfect end to a doomed Resistance story. However, there was one member of Noble Team of whom we never saw meet his end, Jun-A266. Following Noble's acquisition of Cortana, Carter ordered Jun to escort Dr. Halsey to Castle Base. However, in the Fall of Reach, when Halsey's at Castle Base, there's no mention or sighting of Jun whatsoever. Now, stepping back from the canon for just a second, obviously this is because the Fall of Reach was written in 2001, and Jun as a character probably didn't exist until like as early as 2008, 2009. But from a canon standpoint, his whereabouts and seeming absence have never been addressed, nor has how he somehow managed to do the impossible and escape the heavily Covenant-occupied planet. At least, officially. You see, when the Oni black tape is lifted, with the proper clearance of course, you'll find two possible accounts for Jun's escape and survival. Now, it's worth noting that neither of these accounts are canon per se, but one is considered as close to canon as possible by both Bungie and 343, and the other is straight from the mouth of Frank O'Connor, Halo's franchise development director who's worked on Halo since 2004. He did narrative work for Bungie since Halo 2, and then continued to do the same for 343. And furthermore, both of these accounts fit perfectly within the existing canon, so if 343 really wanted to, they could very easily just click their fingers and make them both canon. But before we dive into these highly classified files, I'm very happy to announce that today's video is conveniently sponsored by Audible. Audible has the largest selection of audiobooks on the planet, and within that very selection is a plethora of Halo audiobooks, ranging from stories set hundreds of thousands of years prior to Master Chief to stories set post-Halo 5 and pre-Infinite. There really is an audiobook for every type of Halo fan to listen to, at home, on the go, at the gym, or, of course, while playing Halo. Just go to audible.com/HiddenXperia, or text HiddenXperia to 500 if you're in the US, to get 3 months of Audible for just $6.95 a month. That's more than half off the regular price, and absolutely perfect for Christmas time. Given all the Reach hype at the moment, I think I'd be remiss to not recommend the Fall of Reach audiobook, the original telling of Reach's downfall. Not only can you redeem the audiobook with your free credit that you get for signing up, but you can also keep it forever, whether you continue your membership or decide to cancel. So jump into Halo's expanded universe today by giving Audible a try. Go to audible.com/HiddenXperia or text HiddenXperia to 500 if you're in the United States. And join Audible today. So let's begin investigating these highly classified accounts of Jun's escape by first looking at what Frank O'Connor had to say. Now, his account actually comes from a relatively recent Twitter thread, just over like a year ago. Replying to Steven, who wanted to know how Jun actually got off Reach, he gave a surprisingly descriptive, canon-like account of his escape from the planet. Jun's armor systems beeped in protest as the heat-warped seals shrank groaningly towards the gel layer of his tech suit, and the flesh beneath. The windless, insistent cold of low orbit leached into the last few amps of his life support. Above, less than a mile away, he could see the glitter of a mid-tether service pod. If he could reach that airless cockpit, he could reach a hardline comms booster and a glimpse of salvation. The tower's titanium and carbon fibers shrieked as the counterweight, miles above, continued to disintegrate. Climb, he thought, one gloved hand reaching further into the void and darkness above. Below, Reach glowed a Vulcan, baleful crimson. So, according to this brief account, Jun quite literally climbed off Reach. He climbed one of the space elevators that was still intact from the surface of Reach to low orbit until he reached one of the last remaining cockpits that he could then use to take him up as far as possible. I'm assuming he then hopped in a Pelican or something and just yeeted right out of there. So that's pretty cool, honestly. It's a short description, but it makes sense, and honestly, I'd be lying if I said the idea of Jun quite literally climbing a space elevator isn't badass and isn't something that I could totally see him doing. But like I said, it's still a very short description and literally only covers his escape. However, this next account is far more in-depth. Now, this account comes from a story called A Fistful of Arrows, which is referencing Jun's iconic tattoo. It's a fan-made graphic novel written and drawn by Levi Hofmeyr, also known as Leviathan, and it even comes with its own soundtrack to listen to while reading. Now, you might be thinking that this is just fanfiction, and although that's technically the case, it's like the most official form of fanfiction that you're going to find anywhere for any franchise. Leviathan has done official artwork for Halo before, the novel has been literally acknowledged by both Bungie and 343 numerous times, and as far as canon goes, this story fits almost perfectly within the existing canon. So, if 343 wanted to, there is literally nothing stopping them from just making it canon. And I mean, apparently at one point there were even plans to do so. Now, I'm going to do a brief overview of the novel now, covering how Jun survived and escaped Reach, and if after it you want to go and read the novel for yourself, which I highly recommend, the link is at the top of the description. It's also free, so really a win-win situation. So, when Jun and Halsey split from Noble Team and headed towards Castle Base, they were immediately trailed by Banshees as they meandered between countless Covenant cruisers. Reinforcements were on their way to distract the cruisers, and as Jun took out the Banshee, they arrived. An entire UNSC fleet. As they engaged the cruisers, the Covenant played their trap card. A huge CAS cruiser began charging up its glassing beam. Its shields were down, but any Shiva-class missiles the UNSC fired at it would be shot down instantly. So, one of the frigates in the fleet, the UNSC Daedalus Wing, made the ultimate sacrifice, flying into its vicinity and detonating all the Shivas it had on board, destroying both herself and the CAS in one enormous explosion, and clearing a safe path for Jun and Halsey. When they reached Castle Base, they were greeted by Captain McLean, an Oni ODST stationed at the base. With most of the base now evacuated, the plan was to go forward with Operation White Glove, giving Castle Base the same fate as Sword Base, but only if the Covenant didn't stumble upon it. If they didn't, then the remaining survivors would instead hole up inside the base within the Menashite Mountain, and let the storm pass. It was basically Oni's equivalent of go to the Winchester, have a nice cold pint, and wait for all of this to blow over. Halsey was quick to dismiss McLean and his ODSTs, ordering them to get to a safe extraction point, as White Glove only required one person to conduct, but the captain refused. Only he and 3 other ODSTs in his squad had survived the drop to the base. He wasn't about to let his squad members die for no reason. As they were discussing plans, suddenly a corvette came crashing down through the sky, closely followed by a Paris-class frigate, both crashing down to the surface, and above both of them, another cruiser. Immediately, Phantoms were sent down to hunt for survivors, and given how close to Castle the ships had crashed, the Covenant could very easily stumble upon it. Up until now, all the base's defenses had been deactivated to help give it the lowest profile possible, but now that Dr. Halsey herself was there, that was no longer an option. Despite her disagreement, Captain McLean ordered the defenses to be reactivated, which, in Halsey's words, quite literally kicked the hornet's nest. The ODSTs began engaging the Banshees, and consequently, the Covenant's gaze was well and truly brought directly upon them. And as if matters couldn't get any worse, some of the Scythe AA turrets were refusing to come back online. So, Jun hatched a plan. He'd only recently found a cache of supplies containing 16 mags of armor-piercing rounds, medical supplies, an armor lock unit, 8 Lotus anti-tank mines, and remote chargers. Using these supplies, he ordered the ODSTs to fall back and escort Halsey to the AA turrets so she could get them back online, while he covered their retreat using his new toys. They complied, as any ODST would to a Spartan, and as the Covenant disembarked their ships, Jun took to the shadows, awaiting the enemy. He started off by detonating the chargers he'd placed under the landing pads, sending countless elites, grunts, and dropships into the abyss. Meanwhile, Halsey and her AI, Kalmia, had managed to reroute the power from Castle to the turrets to get them back online, and they worked like a charm. But it wasn't over yet. Before the ODSTs had a second to celebrate, a Jackal phalanx began pushing up the road, with skirmishers shooting from behind the shields. As you'd expect, they were having a tough time taking them out as they continued to push closer and closer, until, out of the blue, came a high-velocity armor-piercing round, going straight through the skull of a skirmisher. There's no backup quite like a gillied Spartan. Back on the front line, the ODSTs noticed something fall behind them, a piece of a turret, and when they turned around to check on their condition, what they saw was dire. something had managed to completely destroy the scythes without their noticing. As Jun's attention was drawn away by a pair of hunters, out of the shadows came a squad of Spec Ops elites, one of which instantly impaled Captain McLean, lifting him off the ground and sending the ODST to a gruesome fate. When Jun had dealt with one of the hunters by sniping it directly in the neck, doing something that only Jun could manage, he panned his scope back to the ODST position, but all that remained were bloody, lifeless corpses. This put Jun in a state of disbelief. He panned away for mere seconds, and the entire squad had been massacred. But what he saw when he continued scanning the area only exacerbated this disbelief and worry. The Spec Ops elites had captured Dr. Halsey. The elites called out to Jun, taunting him. They knew he was there, somewhere, and to get him to come out, they threatened to kill Halsey. Although thankfully Kalmia was still nearby and could offer a perfect translation to Jun. The elites were bluffing. The Covenant higher-ups knew exactly who Halsey was, and they absolutely could not afford to have her harmed, let alone killed. But that was no help to Jun. As soon as he took one of the elites out, the others would just camo up and kill him before he could even begin to relocate. He was Halsey's last guard. The fate of humanity was in his hands. And in this moment of dire importance, suddenly Carter's final words came back to him.
Jun, make sure nothing falls into enemy hands.
I'll do what's necessary, sir. Good luck.
You too, Rifleman.
He pondered taking out the elite who held a hostage, but it was just far too risky. He lowered his scope, took his finger off the trigger, and prepared for a more unconventional means of engagement. He took a leap of faith, throwing himself from his vantage point into the elites. He broke his fall with a fist to the face of the elite holding Halsey, knocking them both to the ground and breaking their shields, before shouting at Halsey to run. Now, it was just one Spartan, unbeknownst to him the last of his squad, and a Covenant Spec Ops squad. But no Spartan ever accepted their fate, and Jun was not about to break that tradition. Surrounded, the Spartan 3 fought like hell, using any means necessary to outmaneuver and neutralize the enemy. Using one elite sword, he managed to impale the other, and it was going well, until one of the grunts in the squad began to restrain him, allowing the elite whose sword had just slayed one of his own brothers to cleanse that sword of the dishonor with the blood of the demon. However, Jun had one last trick up his sleeve, a plasma grenade. He lit the demon flare, which he knew would trigger a chain reaction with the other grenades scattered across the floor by the warriors he'd already dispatched. And right before the chain of explosions began, he slammed his fist into the dirt, activating the armor lock module he'd scavenged earlier, as the entire Spec Ops contingent were incinerated in a bright flash of plasma. With the area clear, he went to check on Halsey when all of a sudden, the final adversary reared its head. The other hunter, the Bond brother that he hadn't killed. Taking Jun by complete surprise, the hunter smacked him with his shield, sending him flying into a wall and knocking off his helmet and crushing the AP rounds he had stored on his shoulder. As he lay there, partially conscious, battered, beaten, and bloody, the hunter approached Halsey, seconds away from dealing an incredibly messy killing blow. But from out of the shadows, Jun unsheathed his combat knife and leaped onto the back of the hunter and began to slash away at his neck. The more he slashed, the more worms and orange liquid sprayed out, covering his blade, before eventually the beast was brought down. With the area now actually clear, at least for the time being, Halsey beckoned him into the entrance of the mining facility, at the back of which was an elevator that took them directly to Castle Base, which was equipped with a fully stocked medical bay. But Jun refused. If the Covenant came back and found their way into Castle, everyone in there was history, and Jun was prepared to do anything and everything to stop that from happening for as long as possible. Halsey reminded him that going back out there was suicide, but he was well aware of the consequences. He wanted to make the enemy regret ever setting foot near Castle, hold them off for long enough for the base to either be blown or for somebody to provide safe evac for Halsey and get her off the planet. Before Jun left the base, departing into the ominous amber glow of Reach, Halsey asked him a question. What did George say to you during the operation in Quezon, which was a region of Reach? It was something that Mendez, who trained the Spartan 2s, had told him, that a Spartan can't have his own baggage or his own weight. There's just no room. He already has the weight of all of humanity on his back. Jun concluded by saying that they were wise words, but that's all they were. They were just words. In the heat of it all, words can't help you pull the trigger. Sometimes you just know what you have to do. When you resist that, that's when you can feel it, shaking you from the inside. That's why you're alive, Doctor. I stopped resisting. Be seeing you. And that's how Jun ensured Halsey's safety and survived the events of Reach. Now, granted, it doesn't explain how he escaped Reach. At the end, he just disappears back into the amber chaos of the planet. But if you combine Fistful of Arrows with Frankie's description of how he escaped the planet, you get a perfect, canon-friendly, and incredibly badass explanation. Now, all 343 have got to do is canonize the whole lot, and we're sorted. But yeah, that's a Fistful of Arrows. There are details from the story that I left out of the video because, honestly, I don't want to spoil the entire thing. It's an absolutely fantastic story that I highly, highly, highly recommend reading. The amount of work that Leviathan put into it is nothing short of incredible, so I really couldn't bring myself to spoil the entire thing in a video. Again, the link is right at the top of the description, so please, if you have an hour to spare, go and check out A Fistful of Arrows if you want more Noble Team backstory. It is absolutely 100% worth it. It is, without a doubt, one of my favourite pieces of Halo media of all time, and it's not even canon. The story is nothing short of incredible. The artwork is perfect. It's all perfect. It's incredible. Please, seriously, just go and check it out. It is so, so, so good, and you will not regret it. But yeah, this is a long one, so I think I'm going to bring it to a close here. Thank you once again to Audible for sponsoring the video. Don't forget audible.com/HiddenXperia, or if you're in the US, text HiddenXperia to 500-500 to get 3 months of Audible for only $6.95 a month. Absolutely perfect for catching up on Halo lore over Christmas. I want to give a massive thank you to everybody who continues to support me over on Patreon. I love you all, and thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next one.